Sinéad O'Connor. In 1990, it seemed like Sinéad O'Connor was about to take over the music industry. Nothing Compares to You was everywhere. On the radio, on MTV, blasting from people's living rooms. You name it. It made her a superstar overnight, but Sinéad was never built to play by the usual pop star rules. While other singers were chasing fame and all that comes with it, she shaved her head bald, wore no makeup, and called out the music industry for trying to control her. She wanted to say something that would put her on the spot, but not for more fame, and that's where the tension started. People loved her voice, but they didn't know what to do with her daring attitude. She didn't act safe or marketable, and in the 90s, that was really dangerous. Then came the night that changed everything. It was 1992, Saturday Night Live, live TV, and Sinéad sings Bob Marley's War. At the end, instead of bowing or smiling, she holds up a photo of Pope John Paul II, rips it to pieces, and says, "Fight the real enemy." Immediately, there was silence. There was no applause, and definitely no side talks. People were so shocked that they didn't know what to do with what she just did. The next day, the world went crazy. Headlines attacked her for being disrespectful. People boycotted her records. NBC banned her songs. And even celebrities like Frank Sinatra said she should be punched. Just weeks later, she walked on stage at a Bob Dylan tribute and the crowd booed her off. Overnight, Sinéad went from one of the biggest stars in the world to someone the industry wanted nothing to do with. She had gotten blacklisted. But here's the strange part. Even with everything, Sinéad didn't back down. While her career never hit those early chart-topping heights again, she kept making music that was raw, political, and personal, and years later, when the Catholic Church abuse scandals went viral, people finally started saying she was right all along. The same move that destroyed her career in the 90s is now seen as one of the boldest protests in music history. By the time she died in 2023, Sinéad wasn't only remembered as the singer who flopped. The Chicks. In the late 90s and early 2000s, the Dixie Chicks were untouchable. They were the perfect definition of a top-tier country group. They sold millions of albums, won Grammys, and had a fan base across Texas and Tennessee to everywhere in between. But their reign had an expiration. In 2003, at a concert in London, lead singer Natalie Maines made one short comment that changed everything. She said they were ashamed that President George W. Bush was from Texas. At the time, the U.S. was gearing up for the Iraq War, and country music's core audience was very patriotic. That single line ruined everything they had worked so hard for. Radio stations blacklisted them overnight, fans staged CD-burning parties, and they went from country darlings to enemies of the state in record time. For a group that had been dominating the charts, it was shocking how fast they were dropped in ranks. Seeing the damage they had caused, they tried to fight back. In 2006, they released Taking the Long Way, and this was an album that directly addressed the controversy, with the single Not Ready to Make Nice hitting back at the backlash. The album actually won them 5 Grammys, proving critics actually loved it, but country radio still wanted nothing to do with them. And in a genre where radio play basically makes or breaks careers, that was a death sentence. For over a decade, the Dixie Chicks were basically out of the mainstream. They still toured and had loyal fans, but their golden era was gone. The controversy never really faded either. For years, whenever their name came up, it wasn't about their talent or hits. It was mostly about that one political comment. In fact, the backlash lasted so long that even in 2020, when they tried to rebrand as The Chicks to move away from the whole issue, it still felt like it was too late. What's probably the wildest thing about it all is how much their legacy has become the ultimate example of what happens when politics crashes into country music. One comment about a president ended a career that seemed unstoppable. And even though they're more respected as pioneers, they went from selling 30 million albums to being remembered as the group that got canceled before cancel culture was even a thing. Kesha. Kesha's flop story is very different but just as dramatic. She got famous in the music industry in 2009 with TikTok, a song that literally defined a generation of wild, party-loving pop music. She was the girl with glitter on her face, brushing her teeth with a bottle of Jack, and for a few years, she was the future of music. Every single she dropped, including We Are Who We Are, Blow and Die Young, went straight to the charts, but everything changed when she filed a lawsuit in 2014 against her producer, Dr. Luke, accusing him of sexual assault and abuse. Suddenly, Kesha's career wasn't about fun songs anymore. It was about a very public and extremely messy courtroom battle that divided the music industry. Some fans and celebrities rallied behind her, even starting a number-free Kesha movement that went viral online. Meanwhile, others doubted her claims or just stayed quiet entirely to avoid having issues with Dr. Luke, who, at the time, was a very powerful music producer. The problem was, though, that while the case dragged on, Kesha was stuck. She couldn't release new music under her contract with Dr. Luke, so her career basically froze. Years passed without an album, and in pop music, disappearing for that long is usually asking for your career to end. When she finally came back with Rainbow in 2017, critics loved it. Songs like Praying were raw, emotional, and completely different from her old glitter party persona. But even with Grammy nominations, the momentum she once had was gone, and she wasn't the chart-dominating star anymore. The saddest part of Kesha's career flop is that it didn't really happen because fans stopped liking her music. It happened because her fight with Dr. Luke overshadowed her career and left her unable to compete in an industry that keeps evolving with or without you in it. She went from being the biggest pop star in the world to someone struggling just to be heard again. Azealia Banks. Azealia Banks had everything lined up to be the next big thing in hip-hop. When 211 dropped in 2011, everyone thought she was going to be at the forefront of peak music. She had the talent, the edge, and the fashion industry eating out of her hand, but instead of becoming a mainstream superstar, her career became one long list of fights, controversies, and self-sabotage. She constantly had issues with other artists on Twitter, picking fights with Lady Gaga, Nicki Minaj, and even Beyoncé. On top of that, she was heavily involved in political and woke conversations, sometimes in ways that didn't make sense or completely backfired. It became a cycle. One moment she was championing Black empowerment and women in music. The next, she would say something so offensive that it canceled out everything she had just stood for. Fans and labels got exhausted, and her music started to take a back seat to all the chaos. What made things worse for Azealia is that the music industry usually doesn't have much patience for constant controversy without commercial results. She was very outspoken about racism in the industry, misogyny in hip-hop, and the lack of support for Black female artists, all real issues. Unfortunately, because she delivered those points through personal attacks and very public meltdowns, the conversation stopped being about the issues and instead became about her. It got so bad that at one point she was constantly getting banned from Twitter, got dropped from festivals, and even lost label support. Every time she tried to stage a comeback, the controversies followed her like a plague. Eventually, by the mid-2010s, she had gone from being the most hyped new rapper in New York to being known more for drama than for music. She's still respected in underground circles, and every now and then, she'll release a track that reminds people of how insanely talented she really is. But the mainstream door she once had wide open slammed shut a long time ago. Iggy Azalea. Unlike Azealia Banks, Iggy Azalea rose in a completely different way, but she also crashed just as fast. She got into the music industry in 2014 with Fancy, which became one of the biggest songs of the decade. For a short while, Iggy was everywhere. Award shows, magazine covers, collaborations with Ariana Grande and Jennifer Lopez. But then a backlash hit hard. A lot of critics and fellow rappers accused her of cultural appropriation. She was seen as a white Australian woman putting on a southern black rap accent and profiting off hip-hop culture without respecting its roots. Suddenly, her entire brand was dragged into heated debates about race, authenticity, and wokeness. Instead of being celebrated as a global rap star, she was picked apart as a case study of how the industry treats white versus black artists. Iggy did try to push back, though. She argued that she loved black culture, she was unfairly targeted, and she wasn't the first non-black rapper in hip-hop. But her responses just made things worse. When she complained about being bullied by critics, it made her look out of touch. When she tried to double down on political issues, it came across as forced. Soon enough, the controversial conversation around her completely drowned out her music. By 2015, she canceled her entire arena tour, lost endorsement deals, and went into a kind of exile. What should have been the peak of her career turned into a quick collapse that she never fully recovered from. Even though Iggy still releases music and has a loyal fan base online, her mainstream run ended almost as quickly as it started. The industry and the media basically decided she was done, and she never found a way to rewrite her story. Looking back, Iggy's rise and fall weren't only about her talent or her songs. It was mostly about how quickly cultural conversations can make or break an artist. In her case, once she got labeled as fake and problematic, her career as a pop rap superstar was basically over. Katy Perry. Katy Perry was once unstoppable. From 2008 to about 2014, she was the pop queen of the world. I Kissed a Girl, Teenage Dream, Firework. In fact, every single song she touched basically turned to gold. She tied Michael Jackson's record for the most #1 singles off a single album, she headlined the Super Bowl, and she was the ultimate crossover star who appealed to teenagers, moms, and even country fans. But here's where it all changed. Around 2017, she decided to reinvent herself with the album Witness. Instead of sweet lyrics, she leaned hard into political messages, openly criticizing Trump and talking about unity and resistance. She cut her hair, changed her image, and told fans she wanted to move away from the old cartoonish Katy Perry. But the problem was that her fans didn't want that. The new songs didn't stick, the album flopped by her standards, and suddenly, the girl who couldn't stop racking up hits was struggling to even chart. Her missteps didn't stop there. She started leaning more into activism and woke branding, showing up at political rallies and speaking on issues in ways that made headlines but didn't help her music. The old Katy Perry brand had been bright, fun, and silly, but the new one felt like a lecture, and a lot of casual fans completely tuned out. She even admitted later that she felt disconnected and lost during that era. By the time she joined American Idol as a judge, she had gone from being a top pop star to being more of a TV personality. And as you'd expect, fans quickly noticed the difference. The Katy Perry they knew and loved went from filling stadiums with screaming fans to becoming more of a nostalgia act, where people only wanted to hear her old hits. But with all that decline, the strange part is that Katy Perry never actually lost her talent. She can still write catchy pop songs, and she still has millions of loyal fans, but the dominance she once had is gone. Maren Morris. Maren Morris was supposed to be the new face of modern country. Her hit, titled My Church, had fans calling her the next big thing in Nashville. She had the voice, the songwriting talent, and even crossed over into pop with The Middle, which turned into a global smash. For a while, it looked like Maren was building the kind of career that could balance country roots with mainstream fame. But instead of just chasing chart success, she started speaking out about the side of country music that most stars avoided. She called out the industry's sexism, saying women were constantly being sidelined on the radio, no matter how good their songs were, and she didn't stop there. She openly criticized racism in country music, and even backed Black Lives Matter while most of Nashville stayed silent. That alone made her stand out, but it also made her a huge target. Things got more heated when Maren went even further. She started defending gender appropriation rights, especially trans artists, right in the middle of a culture war. When conservative commentators mocked queer representation in country music, Maren didn't bite her tongue. She clapped back publicly and without remorse. For fans who wanted their country singers to stay neutral or just sing love songs, this was a deal breaker. She started getting called woke non-stop, and country radio stations that were already reluctant to play Tambell artists' songs pulled back even more. Some of her interviews and award show speeches sounded more like political rallies than industry-friendly PR, and while that made her beloved in some circles, it also alienated a large part of the traditional country audience that had boosted her career in the first place. By 2023, the pushback was so heavy that Maren made a completely unexpected move. She announced she was stepping away from mainstream country altogether. She said she was tired of the toxic culture and didn't want to fight that uphill battle anymore. To her supporters, it was a pretty brave stand and proof that she refused to compromise her values for chart positions. But to critics, she was just another artist who leaned too hard into politics and ended up cutting off her own audience. Either way, her career went from having a chart-topping hit to being called a flop within just a few years. Madonna. Madonna wasn't just another pop star. She was literally the blueprint. From the 80s into the 90s, Madonna redefined what it meant to be a female artist. She pushed boundaries with Like a Virgin, Vogue, and Like a Prayer, constantly reinventing herself and staying one step ahead of everyone else. She thrived on controversy, whether it was religious outrage, political statements, or provocative statements. For decades, it worked. She was undeniably the queen of pop, but the problem with being a provocative artist is that at some point, the world catches up to you, or worse, moves past you. In the 2010s, Madonna's attempts to stay edgy started feeling less revolutionary and more desperate. Albums like MDNA and Rebel Heart didn't land the way her classics did, and her political lyrics started to come across as forced instead of landing well. While this was a problem, the real issue was that Madonna built her career on always being ahead of cultural trends. But when she got into modern political activism and social media woke branding, she wasn't ahead anymore. She was now chasing trends and becoming a part of them. She gave fiery speeches at women's marches, dropped anti-Trump statements, and filled her shows with political messaging. But by then, younger artists like Lady Gaga and Beyoncé had already taken over that space in a newer, more authentic way. Madonna's controversies stopped feeling like hit statements and started feeling like publicity stunts. And in the process, her music career started to decline. Her later albums sold poorly compared to previous ones. And instead of being seen as the bold trendsetter, she was suddenly the veteran star trying too hard to stay relevant. Sure, she is still a legend, is still touring, and will always be the queen of pop. But when it comes to cultural dominance, her reign ended the moment her political and woke reinventions started overshadowing her music. For decades, she shocked people and got away with it because the songs were undeniable. But when the songs stopped hitting, there wasn't much to do to save them. Bette Midler. Bette Midler was once one of America's most beloved entertainers. Known for her powerhouse voice, Broadway flair, and movies like Hocus Pocus that made her a household name. For decades, she was admired by all ages, really. But in the 2000s, and especially the 2010s, things changed. Instead of headlines about new albums or roles, Bette became known for her hot Twitter rants and political takes. She's been outspoken about feminism, gender appropriation rights, and especially about Donald Trump and conservative politics. At first, fans admired her boldness. After all, she was never one to bite her tongue. But over time, her constant political jabs started to overshadow her art. Every new statement just seemed to stir controversy, with critics accusing her of being too woke, out of touch, or angry all the time. For most people, the Divine Miss M went from entertainer to online activist. and not everyone followed her there. The thing about Bette Midler, though, is that she's not shy about pushing boundaries, even if it means alienating part of her audience. For example, she stirred major backlash when she tweeted comments that many called transphobic during the height of the gender identity debates. Instead of backtracking kindly, she straight up doubled down and insisted she was fighting for women's rights, not attacking trans people. These moments trended on the internet and put her right in the middle of culture wars that other pop stars try to avoid. While Bette still tours and performs, her once universal appeal feels fractured. Now her music sales and cultural relevance have dipped, and newer generations don't see her as a singer first, but as another celebrity voice in the political noise. Some don't even know who she is at all, and it's not that she doesn't still have the talent, she does, but her career arc shows how quickly the focus can shift when a star becomes known more for being outspoken than for the talent that made them famous in the first place. Cher is one of the most remembered icons in music, fashion, and Hollywood. From I Got You Babe with Sonny in the 60s, to reinventing herself in the 80s and 90s with songs like Believe, she has always been the definition of showbiz. But in the last 2 decades, her public image has been more about political opinions than about her art. Cher has become one of the most vocal celebrities on social media, tweeting about everything from climate change to women's rights, Donald Trump, immigration, and gender appropriation advocacy. Her fans, especially in liberal circles, cheer her on. Unfortunately, just like Bette, her outspoken personality has received a lot of harsh criticism, with people branding her as woke and dismissing her as another out-of-touch celebrity preaching politics instead of making hits. Cher has also had her share of controversies tied to her activism. While she's done undeniable good by donating millions to several causes and supporting marginalized communities, she has also been caught up in viral backlash when her words didn't land right. One famous example is when she tweeted about George Floyd, saying she thought she could have helped if she had been there. It was actually an empathetic tweet, but the internet roasted her for being tone deaf. It was quickly used as a weapon against Cher by critics who argue that her political presence has hurt her reputation more than helped it. Instead of being remembered only as the goddess of pop, she's now often dragged into the mess of culture wars and social media arguments. At this point, Cher still tours and is still a legend to millions, but her celebrity status feels divided. She's adored by loyal fans who celebrate her activism and longevity, but others roll their eyes when her name comes up, focusing more on her latest tweet than her decades of hit songs. Which of them do you think had a chance to save their career? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, then hit the like button and share it with everyone you know who would love to see it. If you'd like more videos like this, then be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next videos. We hope to see you in the next one.